At 0530 hours on June 4, 1942, Lieutenant Howard Oddie climbed aboard his PBY-5 Catalina stationed at Midway Island, getting ready for a patrol that would end up altering the direction of the Pacific War. Oddie, then 24 years old and a graduate of the Naval Academy class of 1939, was flying with Patrol Squadron 23. His aircraft, designated to 3P6, rested heavily on the water, fully fueled for a 700-mile search mission. Somewhere out in the darkness before dawn, the Japanese fleet was nearing. Naval intelligence suspected as much. Radio intercepts supported the conclusion, but no one knew their precise location or when they would strike. The PBY Catalina wasn't designed as a combat aircraft. It was an endurance machine, a twin-engine flying boat with a parasol-mounted wing high above the fuselage. It cruised at just 115 miles per hour, slow, not very maneuverable, lightly armed yet capable of staying airborne for 24 hours, covering to 500 miles and scanning everything within 50 miles under clear skies in the expansive Pacific, where enemy fleets could vanish into millions of square miles of empty ocean. The Catalina offered the Navy a practical answer to an almost impossible task: find the enemy before they found you. Oddie's crew consisted of 8 men: co-pilot Ensign Robert Swan, a navigator, a radio operator, a flight engineer, and 3 gunners. The team had been flying together for months, completing patrol after patrol from Midway, searching endless stretches of water and coming back empty. The routine was monotonous: take off before dawn, fly straight lines over a featureless sea for 15 hours, return after dark, then sleep and do it again. But this morning felt different. The base had been on high alert for 3 days. Every available aircraft was airborne. The Marines had deployed every fighter in their inventory. The B-17 bombers were armed and ready. Everyone knew the Japanese were approaching. The only unknowns were the timing and the direction. Oddie departed at 0415 hours, climbed to cruising altitude, and set course northwest along bearing 315. His assigned search sector covered a 45-degree arc extending 700 miles from Midway. He would fly outward on a specific heading, adjust 15 degrees, fly back, adjust again, meticulously covering 22,000 square miles of ocean. The Catalina held one crucial advantage over other patrol aircraft: it could operate low and slow. While land-based bombers needed higher speed and altitude, the PBY could drop to 500 feet, throttle back to 90 knots, and examine the details of the ocean surface: the shadows, the wave disturbances, the faint anomalies. The crew didn't rely solely on radar screens or bomb sights. They could actually see what they were searching for. By 0530 hours, Oddie was 180 miles from Midway when his co-pilot spotted something ahead on the horizon. Smoke, multiple thick columns rising beyond the curve of the Earth, ships, many of them moving fast. Oddie headed toward the smoke and descended to 1,000 feet. As they approached, the Japanese fleet appeared through the morning haze: 2 aircraft carriers, several battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, the main striking force itself. Exactly what they had been sent to find. The radio operator immediately transmitted the contact report to carriers and main body: bearing 320, distance 180 miles, course 135, speed 25 knots. That message, sent at 0534 hours, set the Battle of Midway in motion. Admiral Fletcher received it aboard Yorktown at 0630. Admiral Spruance aboard Enterprise got the same report minutes later. Every U.S. commander in the Pacific received the same information at virtually the same time. The Japanese fleet had been found. The American ambush could begin. But Oddie's mission wasn't over. He had to maintain visual contact, send updates, and track changes in the enemy's course and speed. The challenge was that Japanese Zero fighters were already being launched from the carriers below. Oddie could see them rising toward his altitude. A PBY had no realistic chance against a Zero. No speed to escape, no maneuverability to evade, no armor to withstand attack. Oddie took the PBY into cloud cover at 4,000 feet and engaged in a 3-hour game of cat and mouse. He slipped into the clouds, emerged miles away, took quick glances at the fleet, transmitted updates, then vanished again before the Zeros could intercept. The Japanese pilots searched aggressively, but failed to locate the Catalina hidden in the shifting overcast. The slow, cumbersome PBY survived by relying on weather, timing, and patience, all while feeding the U.S. fleet crucial real-time intelligence. At 0830 hours, after 3 continuous hours of shadowing the enemy, another PBY relieved Oddie. He turned back toward Midway, landing at 1,000 hours after refueling. He was airborne again at 1300 for a second patrol. Meanwhile, the battle had begun in full force, with American carrier aircraft striking the Japanese fleet. Based on his first sighting report, everything hinged on that initial 0530 contact. The Battle of Midway resulted from many elements code-breaking, tactical choices, bravery, and luck, but without Adi's PBY locating the Japanese fleet, none of those would have mattered. The seemingly slow, awkward flying boat accomplished what no other aircraft could. It searched unthinkable distances, found a fleet hidden in an oceanic haystack, and survived to report it. And that was the PBY's role throughout the war, not glamorous or thrilling most days, yet absolutely indispensable. The Navy operated 93 patrol squadrons flying Catalinas. By 1943, more than 3,000 PBs had been built. They covered territories from Alaska to Australia, from Pearl Harbor to the Persian Gulf, constantly searching, watching, and reporting. The aircraft itself was impressive for a design from 1935. Consolidated Aircraft Corporation secured the Navy contract with a flying boat capable of something no earlier patrol aircraft had achieved. It could travel to 1,500 miles without refueling, remain airborne for more than 20 hours, carry a crew of up to 10 men, and operate entirely from water, eliminating dependence on runways. This exceptional endurance came not from speed but from efficiency, cruising at only 115 miles per hour, barely faster than modern automobile traffic. The PBY relied on its two Pratt and Whitney radial engines, which could run an entire day on just 1,800 gallons of fuel. In many ways, the aircraft was a flying fuel tank outfitted with wings. Fuel cells were built into the hull, with additional tanks in the wings. Every bit of space not required for crew or equipment was dedicated to storing fuel. Naturally, this range required trade-offs. The PBY was slow, making it an easy target for fighters. Its turning radius was vast, measured in miles rather than feet. In terms of armament, early versions carried only 3 .30 caliber machine guns, and even later models upgraded with 50 caliber guns still lacked sufficient firepower for aerial combat. PBY crews often joked that their plane was a clay pigeon with engines, but the Navy did not need the Catalina to fight, only to sea. In the Pacific theater, information often outweighed firepower in strategic importance. Knowing the enemy's position, direction, and composition directly influenced every major decision. Day after day, mission after mission, the PBY supplied that vital intelligence, frequently flying under conditions that grounded other aircraft. The crew accommodations reflected the extreme duration of their missions. Behind the cockpit lay a small compartment containing bunks for resting crew members. There was also a compact galley equipped with a single hot plate for heating coffee and canned rations. Even a chemical toilet was available, an unusual luxury for military aircraft of the era. These weren't indulgences, but practical necessities to endure 18 to 24-hour flights. The galley was very basic: one hot plate, two stainless steel water boilers, and minimal storage space. Crews typically brought canned food aboard, with Vienna sausages becoming notorious staples. Crackers, canned fruit, and most critically coffee were also standard. On a 20-hour mission, coffee often became the crew's lifeline. The hot plate served mainly to heat water or warm canned meals. There was no refrigeration or real cooking equipment. Veterans recalled that after 15 hours of continuous patrol, exhaustion was universal. Depending on the region, the aircraft could be unbearably cold or oppressively hot. Early Catalinas had no cabin heating, making North Atlantic flights miserable. In the South Pacific, sunlight pouring through large glass windows turned the cabin into a sweltering greenhouse. Comfort was never part of the design equation, yet crews adapted. They developed rotation routines. 3 pilots alternated flight duties, while other crew members cycled through roles to stay alert. The bunks provided opportunities to rest, although sleep was often difficult, amid constant engine noise and turbulence. Still, even the simple ability to make hot coffee at altitude offered a critical morale lift. On missions lasting almost a full day, small comforts made a tremendous difference. The PBY's most powerful feature, however, was its versatility. Being able to take off from water meant airfields were unnecessary. Across the Pacific, island bases required only a sheltered lagoon or harbor to support Catalina operations. This flexibility allowed the Navy to establish patrol stations on remote atolls that lacked infrastructure for traditional aircraft. Places such as Canton Island, Palmyra, and numerous tiny islands became unsinkable carriers for PBY operations. The aircraft could also be modified for diverse missions. The standard PBY-5 was strictly a flying boat, but the PBY-5A introduced retractable landing gear, transforming it into an amphibious aircraft able to operate from both land and sea. This versatility proved vital in areas where weather sometimes made runways usable, while water surfaces were dangerous, or vice versa, such as the Aleutian Islands. By the end of 1942, the Navy realized the PBY's potential extended far beyond patrol duty. Its long range and ability to operate in the dark made it ideal for a mission that hadn't initially been conceived: night attacks on Japanese shipping. This necessity and creativity gave rise to the Black Cat squadrons. During daylight, Japanese forces dominated the skies in many regions. Their fighters controlled airspace, and their anti-aircraft guns guarded their fleets. But night brought a shift in advantage. Japanese fighters were ineffective in darkness, leaving their ships vulnerable. The challenge, however, lay in locating and striking enemy vessels without radar or advanced navigation equipment. Lieutenant Commander Clarence Taft pioneered the tactics that defined Black Cat operations. His squadron, VP-12, arrived at Henderson Field on Guadalcanal in December 1942. Although Marines held the airfield, Japanese forces resupplied their troops nightly using fast destroyers. In what Americans called the Tokyo Express, these vessels delivered supplies, landed reinforcements, bombarded Marine positions, and fled before dawn. Taft recognized that the PBY could intercept these vessels at night, but it required significant changes. First came the paint. Standard PBs had blue-gray upper surfaces and white undersides, suitable for daytime operations but useless under moonlight. Taft ordered his aircraft completely repainted in matte black, including the national insignia. Only small red serial numbers remained visible. Under darkness, the aircraft became nearly invisible. Next, the tactics needed reinvention. Daytime patrol relied on disciplined patterns and steady altitudes. Night attacks relied on unpredictability. Black Cats lifted off at dusk, navigated toward likely enemy shipping lanes, and began hunting. They flew extremely low, sometimes just 50 feet above the water, using island silhouettes to conceal their approach. They attacked from unexpected directions, dropped their ordnance, and vanished before the Japanese could respond. Weaponry also evolved. Standard Catalinas typically carried depth charges or bombs. Black Cats carried whatever was available: bombs, depth charges, torpedoes, and even improvised weapons. Some crews threw hand grenades out the side blisters. One particularly famous incident involved a Black Cat crew attacking a Japanese submarine, using makeshift Molotov cocktails made from beer bottles filled with aviation fuel. The psychological effect on Japanese sailors was substantial. They had grown accustomed to operating safely under cover of night until black-painted flying boats began appearing out of nowhere. The Japanese independently coined the name Black Cats, unaware the Americans used the same nickname. The moniker reflected how the aircraft silently approached, attacked, and disappeared like a predator in the dark. The tactics created by Taft spread quickly across other Navy units. At first, senior commanders reacted with skepticism. Using a large, slow-flying boat as a night attack platform sounded almost ridiculous, but reports began to arrive, first sporadic, then daily, describing damaged destroyers, sunk transports, and entire convoys forced to turn back. Within weeks, what had started as an improvised experiment became one of the most successful operations in the Pacific. Yet success did not come simply from black paint and bold ideas. It depended on the discipline and courage of crews who flew under conditions few pilots of the era ever experienced. Navigating without lights at 50 feet above the ocean, in complete darkness, required absolute trust between pilot, co-pilot, and navigator. A single miscalculation, a low cloud, a sudden swell, a mistaken heading could send the aircraft crashing into the sea. At night, you don't see the ocean, recalled Lieutenant Bill Archer years later, one of the earliest Black Cat pilots. You feel like you're floating in a void. The only real thing were the engines, and the enemy we knew was out there. The tension was constant. The Japanese soon sensed that something was happening, though it took time to identify the cause. They strengthened spotlights, increased night watch patrols, and mounted additional anti-aircraft guns aimed skyward. Even so, the threat remained. The Catalinas came from where they were least expected, attacked, and vanished into the blackness, as if swallowed by the ocean itself. Beyond direct attacks, the Black Cats played another critical role, illuminating enemy ships for other aircraft. During major amphibious operations, they flew ahead of American fleets, locating Japanese vessels and dropping flares to mark targets. From miles away, bombers and fighters moved in to finish the job. It was silent, invisible teamwork, and absolutely essential. It didn't take long for Allied officers to notice a shift in Japanese behavior. The ships of the Tokyo Express began using longer, riskier routes to avoid known Black Cat patrol zones. In some cases, night operations were delayed until dawn, when the danger decreased. Even then, the pressure didn't vanish. Every night on the Pacific became more dangerous for any Japanese commander brave enough, or unfortunate enough, to sail. The psychological impact was severe. Intelligence gathered after the war revealed that many Japanese sailors believed ghost-like aircraft hunted them. Some thought the Americans had developed technology to see in the dark, something that seemed impossible at the time. Others were convinced the Black Cats were guided by evil spirits, a superstition that spread rapidly through the ranks. Meanwhile, on the American side, the squadron's reputation soared. The pilots were young, many with limited service experience, but they quickly became specialists in night warfare. None of them saw themselves as heroes. To them, it was simply the job. Long flights, tense minutes over dark water, and an aircraft that somehow survived encounters it had no business surviving. By 1943, missions began to evolve. In addition to attacks, the Black Cats took on rescue operations. Because they could land on open water, sometimes under dangerous conditions, they became the salvation of pilots shot down near hostile islands or drifting alone in the Pacific. On several occasions, crews risked enemy fire to recover survivors, saving hundreds of lives throughout the war. Each mission made it increasingly clear that the slow, lightly armed Catalina was far more than a patrol plane. In the right hands, and in the right darkness, it became a strategic weapon, one that altered shipping routes, confused veteran commanders, and gradually weakened Japanese control of the Pacific. The war continued, but one truth had already become unmistakable. The Black Cats were not just an improvisation, they were becoming a legend. By late 1943, the Black Cats had become an indispensable force across the vast reaches of the Pacific. Their success prompted the Navy to expand night operations, assigning more squadrons to key regions from the Solomons to New Guinea. Each new deployment brought new challenges and new opportunities for the Catalinas to prove their worth. One of the most demanding assignments was along the northern coast of New Guinea, where dense jungle, razor-sharp mountain ridges, and unpredictable weather combined to create some of the most dangerous flying conditions anywhere. In the war, the Japanese controlled dozens of coastal outposts, protected by hidden anti-aircraft guns and camouflaged supply vessels hugging the shoreline. Conventional aircraft struggled to locate these targets, especially at night. The Black Cats, however, thrived flying low over the ocean. They used the faint outline of the jungle-covered hills to mask their approach. Navigators learned to read the subtle variations in starlight reflecting off the water. Pilots memorized the shape of each island and peninsula, using them as landmarks when clouds swallowed the moon. In these conditions, radar-equipped aircraft might have been ideal, but for many months, the Catalinas had only their training, experience, and instinct. Their effectiveness drew the attention of General Douglas MacArthur's headquarters. His staff noted that Japanese barges were slipping along the New Guinea coast almost every night, resupplying isolated garrisons and reinforcing strategic strongholds. Eliminating these lifelines became a top priority, and no aircraft was better suited for the job than the Black Cats. Night after night, the Catalina stalked the coastline, hunting for the tiny wakes of barges trying to hide in the shadows of overhanging trees. When spotted, the attacks were swift. The Catalina swooped down to barely above water level, dropping flares that turned the jungle shoreline into daylight for a few critical seconds. Bombs fell, machine guns rattled through the blisters, and the barges erupted in fire. By 1944, the Japanese barge network, once their most reliable method of coastal transport, was crippled. But success did not come without cost. Weather remained the Black Cat's most relentless enemy. Tropical storms formed with little warning, bringing towering waves and walls of cloud that could swallow a Catalina whole. On more than one occasion, pilots were forced to ditch in the open ocean after becoming hopelessly disoriented. Some crews survived to be rescued days later, others simply vanished, leaving only a radio call or oil slick behind. Those who flew the long New Guinea missions also remembered the silence, not the peaceful sort, but a heavy, almost suffocating quiet that fell over the cabin once the engines throttled back for an attack. Run. In that moment, with nothing but darkness ahead, The crew waited for the first flash of enemy gunfire. Many admitted later that the anticipation was worse than the fight itself. In January 1944, the Black Cats were called upon to support one of the most daring operations of the campaign, the Allied landing at Sadr. Their task was to disrupt Japanese reinforcements long before they reached the battlefield. For weeks, the Catalinas patrolled night after night, searching for convoys, barges, or troop transports. They attacked relentlessly, often returning with empty bomb bays and bullet holes stitched across their wings. After the landing, General MacArthur sent a personal commendation to several Black Cat squadrons, praising their indispensable contribution to the success of the operation. It was rare recognition for crews who typically worked in the shadows, their achievements invisible to most of the military and unknown to the public. Yet those who served knew the truth. Without their nightly operations, many of the Pacific campaigns would have dragged on far longer and at far greater cost. By mid-1944, the tide of the war had turned decisively. American forces pushed steadily northward, closer to the Philippines and the Japanese home islands, and ahead of every new offensive, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, the Black Cats flew into the darkness, clearing the path in ways few would ever fully understand. The legend grew, but so did the danger. The next phase of the war would test the Catalinas in ways even their experienced crews had never imagined.